So welcome to our first APC Chats with APC Collective. I'm Audrey Ponzio. I am with Sergio Alcocer, who was a very well-known, loved, and respected international creative who, for the past 15 years, maybe 16 years, was building Latinworks, which is an award-winning multicultural agency. He has since left to start Rest of World agency, which we're really excited about because I think there's a really unique positioning and the timing is perfect. Today we're talking about storytelling, and we want to hear from storytellers and master storytellers. Sergio has obviously shared stories on behalf of clients, but we kind of want to dive in a little bit about how he thinks in terms of telling the story. So welcome, Sergio.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us. So tell us a little bit about your story.
Well, I came to the United States a little more than 20 years ago to New York after doing several years of a career in advertising as a creative in Latin America. I started as a copywriting in Mexico and then evolved into a creative director in the Dominican Republic and in Venezuela. And finally I arrived to New York in 1993. And I fell in love with the idea of the Hispanic market, which was talking about storytelling was an incredible story yet to be told. In 1993, the Hispanic market is nothing like we understand it today. You know that things happen at the census, and before the census 2000, all the work that was done for the Hispanic community was almost like corporate relations and support from that point of view. Not really a way for brands to build stories or to build a business. Sorry. But I fell in love with the whole idea of a market inside of a market. I thought that, many people thought about it as being something very traditional, but I always imagined something very cool, like a very cool experiment where you have people that have such an incredible legacy of magic and color and smells like is Latin America, but that certainly are now living inside of the United States. And I always thought that confluence and that was going to spark really cool things. There's the story of Latinos in the United States is obviously started hundreds of years ago. I mean, the United States and Latin America have always been together, and at parts, as you know, many parts of the territory of the United States today used to be Mexican territory, and there's a lot of people that stay here. But at the beginning of the 20th century, and maybe until the 80s or 90s, there was like this subcultures of Latinos in the U.S. that I always found fascinating. The Chicano culture in parts of California and Texas, the presence of Latinos in Hollywood in the 30s and 40s, the suiters in Los Angeles, and all the incredible stories of the riots in the 1940s in LA, which is very undocumented still. Yeah. The arrival of West Side Story as a narrative of Latinos in the Bronx, very strange movie when you look at it as part of the story of Latinos. So I always thought that there was a very interesting background of this relationship that has between the United States and the Latino and the brown skin in a way. That needs to be told from a not from a historical point of view, but from the advantage of cultural and the beginning of a new culture. So with that approach, and obviously always in parallel path to doing the advertising day-to-day work of building clients' brands, I always stay very connected to the underground of the or the undercurrents of the Latino culture in the U.S. Because, as you know, the Hispanic industry in advertising, it's very Latin American in a way. I mean, it's an industry that was born to talk to Latinos born outside of the U.S. in Spanish language, in Spanish media, but always ignoring the Latinos born in the U.S. And that is a group that don't find. Is just now starting to find representation in this very strange place in the middle between the mainstream media and the Hispanic media that it's all about Spanish language and speaking Spanish with perfect accent. And I fell in love with this idea of of the dirty Latinos, the Latinos
No
in
offense
the Latinos
to
in the
present company.
the Latinos in the United States that cannot pronounce their name.
Are the ones named Audrey? Yeah.
in perfect Spanish, because I think that they were left aside by both industries. So after the year 2000, when we were starting Latin Works and the census for the first time said that there were more Latinos than African Americans, so it was the largest minority in the country. Clients start paying more attention, but it was still talking a lot about the Latino immigrant and the stories of immigration and the stories of people that come to the United States always thinking that they're gonna go back someday, and all that story. At the same time, we saw the growth of the Latino born in the U.S. population. So by now, the idea that I have in terms of the new company many years later, starting in 2017, is to really go unapologetically into bringing those U.S.-born Latinos and their culture and their awkwardness and their dirtiness and their lack of representation, and bring it a little more present into the mainstream. Like get the energy of that culture and apply it for brands. Because I do believe, I mean, aside from the census and the demographic progression showing us, that Latino youth may be one of the driving forces of the growth of the country in the near future. I do believe that beyond just the demographic, there's an element of culture that has been underutilized and that can really create a very nice new version of what being an American means. In the tragic days that we live of social unrest and divisions and political bizarreness, I do have a very optimistic sense that somehow this thing that is happening now with the Trump administration, and I'm not ashamed of calling myself a liberal, but this thing that we are witnessing now, I think it was well needed. I think it's going to create a sense of repurposing. I think it's going to let us see the best out of people. I think that we're seeing signs of a rise of empathy, that somehow we were taking a lot of things for granted, including our immigration status, including our freedom to move in and out, and that seeing that some of those things may be at risk is going to bring people together in a very positive way. And I think that this is going to be what's going to really make the country mature as a multicultural society, and I'm very excited about that. And I want to be a part of that growth. I want to add my grain of salt on bringing forward the culture of immigrants into the mainstream.
Perfect. And I think when I guess post-election cycle, and we can talk freely and politically, however, in whatever depth we want, but I feel like as seemingly devastating as it may be to some, especially those who didn't necessarily vote for the outcome, it may be a slingshot. So we're going to go backwards just a little bit, and in a very forceful way, but hopefully we get to propel forward once the dust settles. So that's what
I have no doubt about that. And talking about not being political, well, the interesting thing is that being a Hispanic is political now.
Yeah.
And just having a company like the one that I aspire to build, which is a company that brings forward to corporate America a different point of view, it's a political act.
Yeah.
So I'm not being political because it's a choice. I have been put in a political position by virtue of who I am and what do I believe in. And I think it's great, right? Because at the end, I cannot change who I am. I cannot change the way that I speak. Well, I could, but
But we wouldn't want you to.
But suddenly I discovered myself that what I do is a political act, and it's interesting.
So the impetus to leave Latinworks, you were successful. You are successful. You're incredibly well known internationally. Every award you can think of creatively. You've told stories. You have record shops. Like, there's so much about you that's nuanced and successful. Why the pivot? Why the second career when you were on top?
Well, I mean, I think the idea of being on top was something that I never had. In retrospect, I see that Latinverse grew more than we all thought, and I'm very proud of the work that we did. When you're doing it, you're not thinking that you're on top. You're always worried that you're gonna,
that it's gonna end tomorrow.
So you don't smell the roses. In retrospect, I see with some surprise that the agency achieved things that we didn't dream, of course. But most importantly, I think that there's an excitement of the things that are happening in marketing today. The advertising industry is being transformed globally, and it's a transformation that it's very pressing, and that it's dangerous. I mean, the advertising agencies globally have struggled with technology. It has struggled with the way that people consume media, even with the crisis of credibility of institutions and brands. And so there's a new world out there. We started Latinverse in 1999, and like many agencies that started at that time or before, our structure responded to that, to those years, and being successful somehow is a curse, because if you're successful with a structure from 1999, it's very difficult to
get out of that
to
mold.
get out of that mold, because you're being very profitable, and because there's a lot of families that depend on that. And I do think that Latinverse still has a structure that can be very profitable and very strong, serving an audience of foreign-born Latinos. The reason why I left was not because the agency was not being successful. I left because I feel that part of my career was done, and that now I wanted to start something that is a structure for 2017 in a totally different way, a smaller structure, working for the reality of projects versus agency of record and the big fees. Because I think that there's a tendency for clients to go to I mean, the gigantic international networks are eating all the independent shops, and they're going to get all the gigantic global brands. But to tell today in the world of advertising that an agency can do it all, it's impossible to believe.
Agree.
So there's space for us specialists that can come around and contribute to work and build brand through projects that allow you to have smaller structures, and that allow you the freedom to do work that is a little more specialized to what you really know how to do. So my ambition is to create a new type of model, not in rejection of the old type of models, but as an alternative, as an evolution, and as an alternative of where I think the business is going. On the other hand, the adrenaline of starting again, and it's very humbling, and it's very and it's scary. And I am very excited every morning, because you're starting again from scratch, and that is a feeling that I missed, and that I don't want to lose.
That's exciting. As someone who's doing that on that journey, hats off to you and your former partners for building something that became so successful. Because from my vantage point, who is still in the struggle of duct tape and hoping people don't see the cracks, and my aunt made the breakfast tacos today, like, it's a family affair, and it's a labor of love, but it's the most exciting thing that I've ever done. And I hope it continues, but I think my mission more than anything is to raise up what's next. So if I can be a part of that, I think that's exciting. What are some of the stories you're most proud of telling from a brand storyteller, whether your previous agency or even before?
Well, the idea of storytelling, which I love, but it's new in a way. Well, newish. I think is 10, 15 years, although advertising has always told stories, it's only 10, 15 years ago where we are defining what we do as stories.
Storytelling,
right?
yeah.
And I think that shift came at the same time when more platforms were open. Digital platforms and branded content and things like that, right? We used to do just 30-second mini ads that in themselves are stories, but very very specific in genre. Very difficult to write complex stories in 30 seconds, and many people of my generation were brilliant at it. So to answer your question of which stories am I proud of, is depending on the era in which I developed them and the challenges that were there. But
like Classroom.
well, yes, that certainly was. I mean, it's a Classroom. You're making reference to one of the first campaigns that put Latin words in the creative map. For Bud Light in the Super Bowl, I believe it was in 2007, 10 years ago. Yeah, that not a particularly complex story, but I think that the great thing about that commercial, which just for people that have not seen it, it's a commercial that aired in the Super Bowl, but with multicultural heroes, with a multicultural cast. I think that the great virtue of that campaign was that it anticipated somehow in 2007 what we were going to see in 2013, 14, which
it's incredible.
I would lie to you if I tell you that we got a vision or something. I think that it's a great coincidence, but in retrospect, it's a campaign that play very strong in people's minds because it anticipated a multicultural presence in the mainstream. Certainly, it's an example that I can cite. Yeah.
So I think trying to break out from being what clients expect you to be, and I feel like to some extent. Is it institutional ignorance? Is it institutional comfort? Is it a mix of the both? I feel like when clients are looking for traditional Hispanic engagement, they check the box if they have Spandom campaigns and they feel like everything else will be spillover from general market. How much of what you're trying to do with rest of the world agency is to make them uncomfortable? Is there an appetite for being uncomfortable to say like, hey, the market's changed. We have 60+% of Latinos in the United States are Mexican American. 2/3 of what the growth looks like for the Latino population is, English dominant. What's the appetite from the clients that you're talking to be a little bit more bold and front and center with that not so clear cut target audience?
Well, it is very confusing for them and very challenging for agencies. You see, the Hispanic industry existed on the basis of the language.
Yeah.
And for many years, the Hispanic industry sold to corporate America the idea of a Spanish-dominant, middle-class, optimistic, fair skin, straight hair, perfect teeth, grandma, etc., Latino in the U.S., that the reality does not necessarily match the Latinos on the streets. So there's a stereotype of Latinos created by the Hispanic industry.
Yeah.
And it has a root, it has a reason why, and it has a story, and I don't want to devote too much time to it, but the Hispanic market was created by Cuban immigrants after the revolution of Cuba that came to New York in the early 60s. And these were people that had advertising agencies in Cuba. And these were intellectual, rich, white Cubans that lost their business in the revolution, and that when they come to New York, they went to see their same clients, Colgate, Procter & Gamble, Bacardi, etc., and asked them to do advertising in Spanish in the United States. And basically what they did was exactly what they were doing in Cuba, talking to the same people that they were talking to Cuba. So the Hispanic industry started in the United States without even giving a glance or a chance to the Latinos already established in the United States. So the whole Spanish Harlem and Chicano cultures in Los Angeles and Texas. They were not included.
Ignored.
They were absolutely ignored and not included in what Hispanic marketing was.
Yeah.
And that is the image of Hispanics up to this day for corporate America.
Yeah.
A white skin, middle class bunch. I think that the client, we still need to shake that a little bit, and there's still the problem of media to reach the Latinos that are not necessarily consuming media in Spanish. But since the industry was based on language, the equation for the clients is very simple. If the advertising is in English, the general market, everybody if Latinos speak English, everybody's going to get what the general market does, and if they speak Spanish, then we have the Spanish Dome campaign. It is an effort of understanding culture and an effort of giving voice to the people that lack representation. But it is very challenging. Now, my objective is not to make people uncomfortable, but people is uncomfortable because there's a change in the way that things have been doing for the last 50 years. I would tell you that the Hispanic industry is uncomfortable too. Yeah. The agencies that make very good profit by doing advertising only in Spanish need to keep alive the idea of Spanish as the reason of being. Now,
for their own survival.
Yes, for their own survival. I do think there's of course a lot of businesses that require that you do advertising in Spanish, because there's people that consume media in Spanish and categories that are driven by immigrants.
Yeah.
But I do believe, and I've been saying this for many years, that language needs to be the tactic and not the strategy. And an agency that is a multicultural agency that aspires an agency that to be multicultural for today's America need to understand when to use language and not just make language the default form of work.
So one of the reasons I left my old firm was because I saw the talent was being tapped, not just by competitors or every other agency, but by clients to the tune of 20, 30, 40% more in salary. And I'm like, wait a minute. These kids, and they're younger than me, they're not that much younger than me, but I consider them kids, but these brilliant minds want to be more than just black or brown. Mm-hmm. They just want to be brilliant. They don't necessarily want to be typecasted in the way that I feel kind of I was, being put on diversity teams for X agency or diversity lead for Y agency. They just want to do great work, and they want to work with great brands. They don't necessarily want to be siloed, either on a floor, on an org chart, or in a client assignment. And I feel like to keep good talent, especially the kind of talent that we want to nurture, it's going to have to look like more than what we've grown in the system with.
It is true. It is true. But there's still a lack of diversity in the advertising industry.
Yeah, incredible.
That is, to your point, it is less so on the client side.
Yeah.
I've seen marketing departments of large companies that are more diverse than the general market agencies that serve them.
Yeah.
And those young Latinos on the client side, or young Hindus, mm-hmm. or whatever ethnic background they have, those young executives do see the old white guy present in the agency, and do feel a disconnect.
Yeah, I've had clients demand that they staff an assignment differently, mm-hmm. that it reflects the community we're really trying to serve. Like Starbucks, for instance, that was a client that said, I need my team to represent my community, and it doesn't, so change it and do something fast.
Yeah, well, I think it was in October of 2016, last year, that General Mills and Hewlett-Packard did very bold and brave statements demanding all their agencies and vendors to bring more women and people of color mm-hmm. to the ranks. And it's not just, it's not only about equality for equality's sake, it's understanding that diversity truly brings better ideas.
Yeah, completely.
But anyway, there's as I mentioned before, there's a global struggle of the advertising industry, and then the domestic struggle with the lack of diversity and gender. So it's too many things happening now, and that are making advertising agencies evolve. And another motivation of starting a new company at this stage of the game is that I want to have the opportunity to start all over again, the way that I think you need to start in 2017, which is being born diverse, born with a team that brings the diversity question to the front, to staff for projects, to be flat, smaller, faster, all the things that we are agencies wish we were, and that you discover that the only way to achieve it really is to dare to try it and go for it. Maybe it's a failure, but I think that but the attempt is the right one.
Yeah, the attempt alone, I think, is part and parcel with success. What are some of the brands that you're excited about, whether you're working with them or you're targeting them? Not to give us.
Well, I'm when you're a startup, that question is always fun because on the one hand you go with your values and your ideas, and on the other hand is whatever, right?
Yeah, we have to eat.
But no, I think I can hold it. The good thing is that I think that I'm betting in the right horse. Mm-hmm. As you said at the beginning of the conversation, I think the timing for my agency is right, because this moment of darkness in terms of what being an American means and what multicultural America is and what is the role of immigrants and diversity in the country is being questioned. As again, I tell you, I have no doubt that at the end we're going to reaffirm this as a nation of immigrants. So I think I'm betting in the right horse. So for me, the clients that I want to work with are clients that first respect diversity, the value of diversity, not the human rights of diversity, that of course goes without saying, but that respect the value of diversity to grow their business, that respect the fact that diversity creates better communications, and that take a stance for the things that I believe are right, which is again inclusiveness and just moving forward to rebuilding the American dream. So I want to work with brands that believe that multicultural America is a vibrant future and a valid alternative for the country.
Well, and I'm sure that means most brands, right? Because
yes, well, with the exception of New Balance. And,
let's shame them all right here.
No, I think, you know what, I admire, I think that it's important that people take a stance.
Absolutely.
And I admire people that take the stance, even if it's not the stance that I would take. What I do not admire and would don't find the room for people that are not taking a stance. Yeah. I think that whichever side you want to go, if you do it with purpose and with conviction
and facts
are is valid. I mean, I may not agree, but you're saying what you believe in, and I think that strangely that's part of one of the things that we cannot lose in the country. I became an American citizen like 5 years ago. So
congratulations.
So now I'm
welcome to the tribe.
Yeah. So now I'm seeing it from a point of view of first, I cannot be deported.
Yay.
But seriously, it's a country where my kids were born, and it's a country where I decided to live my life, and I care about it.
From a creative perspective, I can only imagine what it's like to think creatively all day long, and I think I've researched some articles that you've been in, some that I've helped place, but about everything you see, I mean, from music to movies to what you see on the streets is some sort of inspiration.
Yep.
How do you look at creativity today with the digital age, and how has it changed your perspective on what the story needs to look like?
Well, the word creativity is a word that it's associated to my job, but it's a word that I don't use myself to describe anything that I do. I think the word itself, and that may be my English, that may be the way that I think in Spanish and translate in my
What do
head.
you think in Spanish?
No, the word creatividad in Spanish is a little too pompous. So I understand that my job is to be a creative. I just find the word funny, right?
Well, I find it exclusionary when you think,
because it's like a department, it's like the smarter
it's
people
like
than
those
others.
guys get ideas, and I'm like, well,
Exactly.
Yeah.
So creativity is not a word that I apply to myself. Never. Yet I am a person that is very interested in culture and in pop culture, and I think that the best advertising is advertising that either comes from culture or, even better, helps create and shape culture. From that point of view, as you were mentioning, music and film and journalism is something that I am fascinated by, and I think that the internet and the digital platforms have created an incredible surge of journalism. I mean, it's contradictory that from one hand we see newspapers and news hours go down because of the digital platforms, but what we're seeing is a resurgence of activist journalism that is very interesting and that has a pulse of the streets. So all those things informs the way that I look at things, and it's always trying to inform the way that I work. To your question, I think that the incredible opportunity that all the social media and the digital platforms and the ones yet to come are giving people like me is more places where you can create, more places where you can tell stories, more places where you can talk about on behalf of brands, and more places where you can, if you're a young writer or a young designer or a young director or a young producer, you have much more platforms to show your work, and even the possibility of creating your own platform. So, if anything, I think that the rise of the digital platforms is giving us much more tools to work, and that's great.
So you're building your agency. You purposely want to keep it small and kind of in response to the new now, in terms of what solutions you want to bring to a client, whether it's project-based or big ideas that don't necessarily mean retainer ongoing relationships that potentially could get stagnant. What are you looking for? Because I know there's a lot of people that have wanted to work with you over the years, and I'm sure there are a lot of people that have been waiting to see what doors you open or what positions are available. So what are you looking for in that talent?
Well, one of the things that I think as part of the strategy of the new company from the beginning is what I'm good at. It sounds funny, but what I'm good at and what I enjoy the most. Because going back to a previous comment, that advertising agencies feel the need to say that they do it all.
Yeah.
A little bit because of fearing missing an opportunity.
Yeah. Just say yes.
Say yes to everything, and we'll figure it out.
I'm a little guilty of that, by the way. Hence the collective.
All of us.
Let's acknowledge that I need a force behind us. Not.
But I think that there's also value to making a decision of what you're good at and stick to it. As long as you have a network of collaborators and friends that can complement what you don't offer to a client directly. So what I am building is very strong strategy in the ample sense, business strategy, communication strategy, insight, etc., and a very strong creative in the ample sense also, social, traditional content, etc. That's the type of agency that I think we can we can build, and then leave all the other services as collaboration.
Absolutely.
PR, media, production, experiential, etc., are things that you can bring depending when you need them. That you can collaborate with existing partners of the client, or that you can bring some resources because of the network that you have. But for me, the keeping the agency small is not about nothing else than staying true to what you do the best and what you enjoy the most, and rather than trying to get every penny from every single project,
every opportunity.
Yeah. So that is the idea. So what I'm looking for is, people that is as excited as I am with the future of multicultural America, which does not mean necessarily only do multicultural work, but understanding that diversity creates better ideas, or a more interesting path to deliver ideas in the areas of strategy thinking and execution.
So this is one avenue that you believe in and that you've invested in. Are there others, extensions of your background or person or business ventures that you're exploring as well?
Well, not at this moment. At this moment, I want to put all my energy into the startup, of course. It's difficult. I think that the result of believing in culture and the bet on the new culture as to the resurgence of a new culture as a result of what's happening now would be ideal if it can transform later into a generation of content, either editorial or news or music related, or things that are then platforms to show that culture.
Like a culture lab?
Like a culture lab, or like a record label, or like an editorial house, or like a mini newsletter, or things that take that culture that at this moment I'm putting, translating into marketing terms to offer to clients, and how else can you bring it to life? Because I think that aside from my marketing and advertising passion and expertise, there's also a part of me that wants to promote a culture that I just think is very cool.
I think rest of the world is a huge brand opportunity. I feel like even the name in and of itself can be a platform. So I'm not going to tip off Rowan that he needs to get to work on building what that looks like.
No, but the rest of the world is it was incredibly hard to get to it. It took me a lot of previous names to get to the rest of the world. The first people that I mentioned the name I received very weird reactions, because because it's not a typical name for an agency.
No.
And it's very difficult to do a name for an agency, at least for me. It's really
clearly.
Well, but when I put the name in context, and when I explain to people the color palette, the corporate color palette, and what the name stands for, by now it's almost like a very natural name for the type of agency that I want to create.
It's a perfect name.
And I think that is a great sign, because believe me, it didn't sound perfect at the beginning.
It felt intuitive when I first heard it, and felt like, of course, this is exactly what we need.
But it's a weird name for an agency.
It's almost like it's a little bit of an activist statement right off the bat.
Yeah.
Because you're saying we're going to talk to everyone that we probably haven't been talking to, or we're asking clients to talk to.
Yeah.
People they may not have been talking to.
Yeah. Now, where the name came from, not from the point of view of inspiration, of course, because it comes from hours of torture, weeks and months. But when I was a kid in the 70s, there used to be a lot of soccer games between. It was a beautiful tradition that by now I think it's lost. between, say, for example, Manchester United, right, this great team, playing against the rest of the world. And the rest of the world was a team, a one-time team that only existed for that game, that brought together the best players of all the other teams in the world. So that was your only opportunity to see play together.
It's like an all-star team.
Yes, like an all-star team. But it was called the rest of the world. And for me, it was like a magical thing to see all the stars together doing for one moment. And part of me, it's also the type of people that I want to attract to my company. I'm not talking only about the stars part, but to bring people from different places under one roof with the purpose of doing something great. So the name for me started almost as a call for the type of talent that I want to attract.
I love it. Well, on that note.
That's the story.
Yeah, that's the story. You heard it here. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for
I'm
inviting
super
me.
excited to see what you do next. Obviously, you've been incredible. You have good instincts and an eye for talent and storytelling. So we look forward to hearing more from you.
Thank you, and congratulations to you, and thank you for doing this.